Hello everyone, I hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining me. Now today I'm doing 10 cards, 1 kit with the Simon Says Stamp October 2018 card kit. Here's a quick look at everything that comes in the kit. You get 3 colored pieces of cardstock, you get some C&CT fancy foils, 3 sheets of Yupo paper here, and you also get 3 of the C&CT Designs foil cards, which are so neat. And a lot of the stuff in this kit I have never used before, so this is exciting. You also get this beautiful stamp set called Sketched Flowers. It's a 6x8 stamp set, a lot of beautiful sentiments for every occasion in here. You also get a full-size container of the Tim Holtz Rangers alcohol lift ink. Never tried this before, so this is going to be new. Along with the lift ink, you get 3 of the alcohol inks in 3 different colors, beautiful fall colors. You get the orange here is Sunset Orange, the bluish green is Stream, and then you get a yellow called Sunshine Yellow. So that's everything in the kit, a lot of new to me fun things to play with, and so we're gonna jump in. Now I grabbed my little straw, and then I have a little jar of rubbing alcohol. If you have the blending solution, I'm sure it will work better. I didn't have any, and I didn't know if I wanted to invest in any, so I'm just using alcohol that I had in my my bathroom. Okay, so I trimmed down the Yupo paper in half, and I'm gonna play. Now, this is not a technique video, guys, because I have no clue on what I'm doing, just to let you know. This is first time for me, but I'm just dropping the alcohol ink on the Yupo paper and watch it blending together. And I'm adding some alcohol drops and adding a little bit more, and then just adding alcohol inks. That's all I'm doing, trying to come up with a little design. This one here, at first I thought it started turning into a muddy mess, but this is actually my favorite panel that I created. I'm just using the straw to blow the ink around, and then I keep adding more and more ink. Here looks really pretty, and I think that would have been nice if I stopped there, but I just kept adding more ink. In fact, I think I added too much because it was dripping off of my glass mat, off my panel and onto my glass mat. I mean, a lot of it. So I think next time I will take it easy. But I was turning and twisting the paper, and that's when it started turning into a muddy mess, and I just kept adding more. And I'm adding some yellow here. I'm just blowing it around, and this is very interesting stuff. I'm more of a controlled card maker. I'm more of a casing card maker, copy and sharing. This is more of a technique, and I'm not very good at that. But that was my first panel, so we're going to play again with one more panel. I have my little straw here, and I'm ready. I wanted to drop and then blow it. And when you use the straw, it actually dries the ink quicker. So I'm just playing around with what I can create. I was trying to create maybe some little flowers, but that wasn't happening. It was just spreading all over the place. So I end up doing the whole panel. But I just keep dropping and then blowing with the straw and repeating. I wanted to go all the way to the edges, so any white open areas I wanted to fill in with the alcohol inks. And then to lift a little bit of the color, I added the rubbing alcohol. And it's very neat stuff, I have to say, but very, very messy. By the time I was finished, I actually had a towel that was filled with ink, and I'm sure it was operator error on that, but I also had very inky hands. And I suggest you use a well-ventilated area because the fumes from the alcohol and the alcohol ink were pretty strong. But that's my second panel here. I'm going to add a little bit more alcohol. Like I said, you get kind of addicted to it. You keep wanting to add more and more. to see a design that you can come up with. But it's super fun. Okay, we're going to grab another piece of Yupo paper. I've just trimmed it in half again. And for this one, I just wanted to create some dots using the stream ink. And then I grabbed some alcohol and just dropped alcohol in the centers of each of those drops. It's kind of mesmerizing actually when you do this. Kind of like a lava lamp almost. I think my mistake is I swirled the ink. I kept wanting to swish it, and when I did that, the color kind of turned muddy. But I'm going to go ahead and add some yellow now into little drops. And it just, like I said, it's a little bit mesmerizing. This little design, I should have stopped here. I thought that looked pretty cool. But I decided to go ahead and keep adding more ink. This one you'll be able to see the ink kind of fill on the very top. My craft desk is kind of at a little bit of an angle. And so all the ink was kind of concentrating on the very top. But like I said, I just keep adding more and more ink. I don't think I used a straw to blow this one around. But you can see that very concentrated puddle. I ended up just taking a paper towel and daubing it off. And then I thought, well, I'm going to daub the whole thing. Let's see what this does. And I'm going to leave it just like that. So that's my third panel. I ended up making 4 panels in total. And I just set them aside to dry. Now before they were completely dry, let me show you all of the panels that I created. So here we go. I think the middle one is my favorite. But I'm going to actually take the C&CT foil. I'm going to cut out a small strip of it, and I'm going to go over the Yupo paper with it, kind of smushing down. And then any areas that have a concentrated amount of the ink the foil will stick to. And this one wasn't dry all the way actually. I got a lot of ink on the back side of my foil, but I just dabbed it off, and when I did that I streaked my paper, but I still think that's my favorite one. I'm going to do the same thing to all of these panels with the C&CT foiling, just using different colors. Here I used the orange one, and this one was a little bit too dry. It didn't pick up too much of the foiling, but the end result kind of turned it out like a marble effect. Really pretty. Okay. Now we're going to work on this Yupo paper here. I'm going to take the red C&CT foil and go over the top. This one didn't pick up much of the foil, just basically in a corner. So, like I said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just playing, basically. And usually when I do my 10 cards, I want cards that you guys can kind of case, but this was a little bit more difficult. Now, first time use ever is with the alcohol lift ink. And so I placed the image in my stamping platform here, and I used the largest image in the stamp set. And the stamp with the Yupo paper really sticks to it, so the magnets really didn't help much. But I'm going to clean off my stamp. I've used it once already, and so I want to make sure it's super clean. I want to go over my image with the alcohol lift ink, and then I'm going to stamp that on my Yupo paper here. And it's supposed to pick up the ink and transfer to your stamped image. Now, Tim Holtz said to dab it off with a clean paper towel, making sure the areas of the paper towel are clean. And then once it's all dabbed up, then you need to kind of buff it out. And you can see the beautiful image appears on that Yupo paper, and I think that's gorgeous. It gives a really super gorgeous effect. Now I'll take a piece of white cardstock and transfer that ink into the white cardstock. Now I don't know if I did it right. I should have watched more tutorials on how to do this, but it didn't transfer smoothly. It was blotchy transfer. So I'm actually not going to use that paper. We're going to try it one more time. So I have another panel here. I'm inking up my image again. We're going to stamp that towards the bottom of this Yupo paper. And then we'll just lift up our stamp, and then I'm going to go ahead and immediately stamp the image on white cardstock. Maybe it was because it didn't, I gave it a little time to dry on the first one, and so I went right to it on this one. And it stamped better. It stamped really pretty. But there was still a little bit of blotchiness. And I'm really pressing down there on my stamp platform. But it really, I'm going to use this in the card. I think that turned out really nice. But the tutorial that I watched was on YouTube, and it was the Tim Holtz tutorial. And if I find it, I'll link it in the description area for you guys if you want to learn how to do this lifting ink. But I'm just buffing it away, and it really brightens up your image, and I think it just looks really pretty. I like the blue one too. I think that turned out really nice. Okay, now we're going to do more alcohol lift inking, but this time on a block. And I found that the block actually works a lot better. So after each time you want to clean your stamp off really good, you'll add it to your alcohol lift ink, and then stamp it on your Yupo paper, and then transfer your stamp to your white cardstock. I'm going to stamp the little leaf image in the stamp set and do the same thing. I'll just immediately bring it over to my white panel there. I'll clean it off, put it in the lift ink, stamp it on the Yupo paper. And like I said, guys, I may be doing this totally wrong, but from what I remember, I think this is how it's supposed to be done. But it does transfer a lot better with an acrylic block. The white panel that I'm doing, I didn't end up using for my 10 cards, but I did use the Yupo paper down here. I'm just going to stamp the leaf one more time, and then we'll just transfer it to that top paper. And I didn't stamp it all the way, so I'm going to add that little top area again. Okay, I'll take my paper towel and just dab off the ink. And you want to make sure that every time you dab, you want to make sure that your paper towel is on the clean side. Otherwise, you're just going to cover up that ink again. And then you just buff it away. And it creates a really neat effect. Something way different. So, this was really fun to play with. Okay, so all of our panels are done, and we did the alcohol lift ink, so now we're going to make some cards. So I'm going to take this panel, I just trimmed it down, so it's going to leave me a little bit of border on my card base, and I'm going to go ahead and attach this to an A2 size card base. We're going to make a side folding card. Now this one is super duper simple. Like I said, most of my cards for the 10 today are very simple. One, for time purposes, and two, because there was so much to do with the alcohol lift ink and then the alcohol inks themselves. Now, I didn't know how the Yupo paper would heat emboss, and I think it would heat emboss okay. I'm stamping it with my watermark ink pad here, and I chose the sentiment for this card. And it says thinking of you, and then I went ahead and melted it, but you can see it warped, but I think that was my fault. I think the Yupo paper is similar to an acetate, a heat resistant acetate, or a vellum, so they're very delicate, and I think I got too close with my heat gun, and that's why it warped. But I just added a few Simply White Nuvo crystal drops for accents, and then that finishes off my first card. Not my favorite card, but it in real life it's really stunning. Okay, card number 2, another simple dimple card, but we need a sentiment, So for this card, I chose a sentiment that says, "With sympathy and love." I just blocked it off. I stamped it with some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I'm just going to add a piece of foam tape behind here, and then I wanted to embellish it a little bit, and not just have the Yupo paper. And this one picked up a lot of the orange foiling, and so to accent that a bit, I just took some silver or some gold, really thin wire that I had in my stash, and I created some loops, and then I just put that right underneath the sentiment, just as a little bit of dimension and interest, and not to make this card a little bit extra special, I guess you could say. Now for card number 3, I'm taking this Yupo paper, and I'm actually going to trim out the floral portion on the very top, and then on the very bottom I'm going to trim it down so I have a strip of it. I'm going to attach this strip to the left of an A2 size card base. This is going to go directly on my card base. And then now I'm just playing with the placement a little bit, and I think I'm going to use the ink transfer sheet here. So I'm going to take my paper trimmer and trim it down. And I'm also going to take a strip of that Yupo paper and create about a 1/4 inch strip. I had a little bit left, and then this strip I'm going to glue down to the bottom of my my ink transfer sheet. We'll just trim off the top so it fits our card better. We'll save that for another card, and then I'll flip this over. Before we add foam tape, I'm going to stamp my sentiment, and I'm going to stamp it directly on the ink transfer. So I chose "You're in My Thoughts," and again I'm stamping it with my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And then this panel I'm going to flip over and add some foam tape behind. And then we'll remove the release paper and place that on our card base. This is going to be a side folding card. And then for a few bells and whistles, I grabbed some blue gems that I had in my stash. And then that completes card number 3. I think that turned out really pretty. Okay, now we're going to move along to card number 4. We're going to use this piece that we fussy cut out the top portion of. I'm taking the blue cardstock that came with the kit. It is the peacock cardstock, and I cut out a thin strip, and then I am going to add a thin strip of silver mirror cardstock to the very bottom of my floral image there. And then I did add foam tape behind there, but I didn't remove the release paper just yet. I wanted to stamp my sentiment. I stamped the word "Thanks" with VersaFine ink, and I'm going to go over it with some silver embossing powder. I'll go ahead and melt that, and then we'll go ahead and add our panel. This is going to go right over the peacock cardstock, leaving a little bit of a border. And then that finishes off that card. Like I said, these cards are very super simple. I think the detail was more in the process of them versus designing a card. Now I'm going to trim down this pattern paper, or this Yupo paper, so it's going to leave me a little bit of a white border on my card base. Okay, once we have that done, I'm taking some double-sided sticky tape, and I'm going to go over some white cardstock, and then I'm going to take a piece of the Gina K foiling, I'm going to grab a piece of the red here, just going to create a thin strip, and then this is going to go right on top of my sticky tape. And then I have a Hello die. This Hello die is from Pink and Maine, And I'm going to cut out a white hello and then a red foil hello. And I'm just going to glue them both together, but I'm going to offset it just a bit. I wanted it to stand out on that background here. Okay. I'm going to go, at first I was going to make a landscape style card, and then I thought, no, I'm going to make a portrait. So we're going to add some foam tape behind the Yupo paper, and then we'll place that on a card base. I'm just going to take my hello. Any kind of sentiment die that you have would work just the same. I'm going to use my glue and attach my hello, and then to bring out some of that red foiling, I added a few red sequins that I had in my stash. And that completes card number 5. Okay, now for card number 6, we're going to do some stamping. So I'm going to take the large floral image in the stamp set, and I'm going to stamp it. This is actually watercolor, Canson XL watercolor cardstock. I'm going to use my anti-static powder tool. I'm going to grab my Simon Says Stamp watermark ink and go over my image, and I'll stamp that. And you can see that the alcohol inks actually stain your stamps. And I have a water-based cleaner, and it wouldn't clean it. But it really looks pretty. But I stamped it with my watermark ink, and then I heat embossed it with some clear embossing powder, and then I'm just going to color this image in with my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers and my water brush. I'm just going to blend that color out. For that center flower, the 2 center flowers, I used my yellow, and then I created some pink flowers, and to soften the pink I used brown with it. These are the markers that I used. Okay. Now I'm going to take a stitched rectangle die, and I'm going to cut a panel out, and then, because I want that stitch line along the edge, and then I decided to go ahead and fussy cut around the top portion of my rectangle there. Now I'm going to stamp the sentiment that says sending hugs. I already popped up my my stamped image with some foam tape, but before I secure it I wanted to add a piece of black cardstock. I'm just fishtailing the end, and I'm going to place it on the very bottom. Sometimes when you add when you stamp a black sentiment, I always feel it needs something else, and so I thought this would really bring it together. I'll just remove the release paper off my image here, and I'll place that again on an A2 size card base that's 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I didn't add any bells or whistles. I just wanted to keep this very soft and clean. And that finishes off card number 6. Okay, now for card number 7. I pulled out my laminator. Now I used the red foiling for the sentiment on this foil card here. And then I used yellow foil for my flowers. And then for the stems, I'm using orange foil. I did this in 3 separate parts. I'm just running it through my laminator and letting the laminator do the work. Now, once that goes through, all I have to do is lift up my orange foiling. And so I have 3 different foils on this panel here. And it does look so pretty, and I think those foil cards work perfectly. I took a stitched rectangle die and cut out my panel to create one that's smaller than my card base. I'm going to go ahead and add some foam tape behind here and place this on the cardstock that came in the kit. This one is called Burnt Orange. I just created an A2 size card base with it. This is actually a side folding card. And then I wanted to do something a little bit different, and I didn't know how my alcohol inks would react with the foil, but it colored them beautiful. These are the colors that I used. The 2 oranges I used for the flowers, and then these 2 colors here I used for my leaves. Just something a little bit different. but it really turned out pretty. That finishes off that card. Okay, next card, we're going to do almost the same thing with the different colors, but this time we're going to use the little sunflowers. And I'm just going to run it through my laminator. And then once that's done, my sentiment should be that fancy gold. And then each one of the sunflowers are different colors. So I have a yellow, a red, and an orange. And these little cards foil beautifully. I was happy with the way they turned out. But I love dimension on my card, so I wanted to do something else with it. But I took my stitched rectangle die, I'm going to cut out the panel. And then I also took a circle die, and I'm going to cut out the center of each one of those sunflowers. I'm just going to run that through my die cut machine. Okay. Now for my card base, we're going to use, again, the burnt orange. So I'm just going to take my tape runner and adhere this panel directly to my card base. And then I'll grab some foam squares and pop up the center of these circles. But I'm not going to put the yellow on the yellow. I'm going to switch it up a bit. I actually put the red on the yellow flower. And then I put the orange on the red flower, and then I put the yellow on the orange flower. We just mixed it up a little bit, give it a little bit of different color and dimension at the same time. I went ahead and grabbed my Nuvo Simply White and crystal drops, and I'm going over the centers of the flowers for a little bit of detail. And then that finishes off that card. These panels make quick and easy cards. Okay, now for card number 9, I am going to do some stamping with the single rose that was in the stamp set. I'm going to stamp it 3 times, and then I'm also going to take the leaf flourish that's in the stamp set, and I'm going to stamp that 2 times. And all of these were stamped with my watermark ink. Now I'm going to go over them with some white embossing powder. This part you can probably use any embossing powder, but I've seen this done before where you can use your embossing powders and your laminator to add foiling. So that's what I wanted to do with this card. I went ahead and melted it, and then I'm going to go over the roses with this real pretty orange foil. And then for the leaves, I'm going to go over it with the real pretty gold foil. I'm just going to sandwich this between my scratch paper like I did with the others, and then I ran that through my laminator. Now, didn't work very well on that middle flower, but the top and the bottom one worked really good. And then the leaves turned out really pretty too. So I'm not going to use that middle flower, but I'm going to fussy cut every one of those out. Except for the middle one that didn't do very well. Okay, now I kind of cut out a frame in my little panel here with the square die. I used a rectangle die for my panel and then used the square die to cut out that window. I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment that says, "So happy you're my friend." Once I have my sentiment stamped, I'll pop this up with some foam tape and place that on the peacock cardstock, and then I added my flowers. For a little bit of bells and whistles, I went in with some of the blue gems that I had from my stash, and then that finishes off card number 9. Really sparkly. Okay, now for my final card today, we're going to do more stamping. This time I'm just using my Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and I'm going to stamp this flower 3 times. Actually, I stamped it 4, but only used 3 of the flowers. Okay, and then in my stash I have this little rounded corner frame. I cut out a yellow frame with the bright yellow cardstock that came in the kit, and using my pencil I'm going to trace around the inside of it. This way I'm going to stamp some leaves directly on my panel. The panel that I have here is going to be slightly smaller than my card base. It's 4 inches by 5 1/4. I'm just going to use my same Memento ink and stamp the leaf 3 times. I'll go ahead and remove my pencil marks, and then I'm going to color in those leaves with my Copic markers. And you can see I colored in my flowers with my Copic markers, and I just fussy cut those out. Once the coloring's done, I'm using my black marker to clean up one of the images that didn't stamp too well. But I'm going to add my frame right in the center here. And I'll go ahead and add some foam squares behind my little flowers, and we'll add those. Covering up the stems of the leaves. And then I did go ahead and place this on the bright yellow cardstock that came in the kit. I just created a card base with it. For bells and whistles, I went in the center of the flowers with some gold glitter drops and added my sentiment that says smile. And that finishes off that card. So this video ran a little bit long, sorry guys, but there was a lot to do. But these are the 10 cards I made with the Simon Says Stamp October 2018 card kit. I hope this gives you some ideas on how to use the kit and how to create some fun cards. The kits did sell out, unfortunately, so this video is more for inspiration. But I'd love to hear your comments. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for stopping by, guys. I wish you a fantastic day, and we will see you again real soon. Bye-bye.